I never thought a simple cup of joe could flip my world upside down. But there I was, sitting across from Alex, this total stranger who somehow made me laugh more in an hour than I had in months. It was like a scene out of a cheesy romance flick, except it was my life, and boy, did it feel exhilarating. David, my fiancé, was the complete opposite of Alex. Where David was all about schedules, routines, and, well, policing, Alex was spontaneous, adventurous, and dangerously charming. I knew I was playing with fire, but the thrill was too intoxicating to resist. I started cooking up stories to see Alex, telling David the first had signed up for evening classes to better myself. It was partially true. I was learning, alright, learning what it felt like to feel alive again. David, bless him, was so supportive, telling me he was proud of me for finding something to be passionate about. If he only knew. The first time I sneaked out to meet Alex, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst through my chest. We chose this quiet little restaurant on the outskirts of town. The kind of place you'd never go unless you had a reason to hide. Every laugh, every touch under the table, was laced with guilt, but I couldn't stop. Our secret rendezvous became our little routine. With David often working late, it was easy to slip away into Alex's arms. It felt wrong, but oh, so right. I was getting addicted to the rush, the secret glances, and the stolen kisses. Alex was like a drug, and I was hooked. Then came the text that changed everything. Alex wanted to whisk me away for a weekend. My heart skipped a beat at the thought. Making up a story about a work conference, I lied straight to David's face. The guilt was there, nagging at me, but the excitement drowned it out. That weekend, Alex gave me a necklace. It wasn't just any piece of jewelry. It was a symbol, a tangible reminder of our connection. I hid it in my drawer, a secret token of my betrayal. Every time I looked at it, a mix of joy and sorrow washed over me. Meanwhile, David started acting strange, his casual questions about my day feeling more like an interrogation. I brushed it off, attributing it to stress from work. But deep down, I knew my web of lies was getting too complex, too fragile. The fear of getting caught started to creep in, but it was too late. I was in too deep, and there was no turning back. Every ding of my phone felt like a ticking bomb, echoing the chaos of my double life. Here I was, crafting an art out of lies, deleting messages from Alex as soon as they popped up, and concocting alibis that even I started to believe. The thrill of sneaking around with Alex was shadowed by the dread of getting caught. It was like living on the edge of a knife, and honestly, part of me loved the adrenaline rush. But David, oh David, he wasn't the oblivious fiancé I hoped he'd be. I noticed the way his eyes lingered a bit too long, piecing together the fragments of my poorly spun tales. My heart would race not just for the excitement of my secret romance but also for fear of what lay ahead. Then came the night that could have changed everything. David, in a rare moment of spontaneity, planned a surprise dinner at our place. He wanted to reconnect, he said. But fate, or rather Alex, had other plans. A text came through, an urgent plea for one of our rendezvous, and like the fool I was, I ditched David's dinner, mumbling something about a work crisis. The guilt gnawed at me, but the pull towards Alex was stronger. Lying in Alex's arms that night, a part of me wanted to end this charade. The lies were suffocating, the deceit too heavy a burden. Yet, the thought of cutting ties with Alex, of going back to my life with David without the spark Alex ignited in me, felt like a fate worse than getting caught. Unbeknownst to me, David had grown suspicious enough to shadow my steps, his cop instincts kicking into high gear. That night, as I was lost in Alex's world, David was out there, piecing together the truth one observation at a time. The universe has a twisted sense of irony, and it played its cruel hand the night David decided to follow me. He saw my car parked not where I said I'd be, but at a secluded spot known for romantic liaisons. My heart, if it knew, would have stopped. David approached the car, his footsteps likely heavy with dread and hope intertwined. Hope that his suspicions were unfounded, that maybe, just maybe, I was there with a friend, any benign explanation to fend off the betrayal gnawing at his trust. But as he peered through the fogged-up windows, the world as we knew it shattered. There I was, in Alex's arms, the very picture of infidelity. I can only imagine how David's heart sank, the pain and betrayal etching a permanent scar. The confrontation I feared never came that night. David vanished into the shadows, his silence more deafening than any accusation. In those moments, ensnared in Alex's embrace, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside. I was at the pinnacle of my selfishness. The fallout of my actions, the heartbreak I had sown, was about to come crashing down, and I was blissfully unaware, lost in a delusion that was about to dissolve into my worst nightmare. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps us create more content you love. Thank you for your support. As I melted into Alex's arms, lost in the laughter and whispers of promises we knew we couldn't keep, I was oblivious to the storm brewing just outside. My world, built on fragile lies, felt secure in that moment, a dangerous illusion that blinded me to the crumbling foundations of my life with David. David, my once devoted fiancé, had become a silent witness to my betrayal. Retreating to the sanctuary of his police car, he wrestled with a tempest of emotions. Betrayal, anger, a profound sense of loss. From the shadows, he watched the woman he loved share tender moments with another man, each laugh, each kiss, a dagger to his heart. Yet, in the throes of his pain, he found resolve. If words had abandoned him, evidence would speak volumes. In the days that followed, David became a ghost, a specter trailing my every move with a detective's precision. He collected evidence of my affair with the meticulousness of an artist, each photo, each message, a stroke in the portrait of my deceit. Meanwhile, I was adrift in a sea of denial, planning another escape with Alex, believing I could juggle my double life with the finesse of a seasoned acrobat. The thrill of the forbidden clouded my judgment, making me blind to the unraveling of the world as I knew it. But David, in his silent anguish, had not been idle. One day, he confronted Alex, embodying the cold authority of his badge. "Stay away from her," he demanded, his voice a chilling blend of warning and threat. The encounter shook Alex to his core, a testament to the seriousness of the situation we had all underestimated. Alex, caught in the crossfire of passion and peril, agreed to end the affair. Yet, his heart was at war with his mind. He had fallen for me, a reality as inconvenient as it was undeniable. The complexity of our emotions, tangled like a knot too tight to unravel, set the stage for a confrontation none of us were prepared for. Unaware of the seismic shifts occurring just beneath the surface of my duplicitous world, I continued on, blind to the impending collapse. My heart, divided between two men, was a battleground of desire and duty, a war one was destined to lose. The fabric of lies I had woven around myself was about to unravel, leaving me exposed to the harsh light of truth. In this game of hearts and deceit, the cost of my choices was about to become painfully clear. The buzz of my phone shattered the silence, a cold, impersonal text from Alex piercing through the facade of normalcy I'd clung to. "We can't do this anymore. I'm sorry." Just like that, my world tilted, leaving me gasping for air, confused, and heartbroken. I hammered out reply after reply, but silence met my pleas. Alex, the man who'd whispered sweet nothings and promised hidden tomorrows, had vanished, leaving me to drown in the aftermath of our folly. Desperate, I called him, each ring a sharp reminder of the reality I faced. But Alex was gone, swallowed by the shadows, his fear of David's retribution severing the ties that bound us. I was alone, truly alone, the weight of my actions crashing down on me. In the midst of my turmoil, a sliver of hope flickered. David, my David, maybe, just maybe, I could salvage the ruins of our relationship. I turned my focus back to him, oblivious to the storm that brewed in his silent, knowing gaze. David's invitation to a romantic evening caught me off guard. A chance, perhaps, to mend the fractures, to weave back together the tapestry of our love. But as we drove to the location, the air between us was charged, heavy with unspoken words. David's silence was a vast chasm, stretching further with each passing mile. The place he chose was no coincidence. It was the very spot where the veil of lies had been lifted, where my betrayal was laid bare under the stark moonlight. My heart raced, a premonition of the impending confrontation sending shivers down my spine. As we arrived, David's movements were deliberate, his silence finally breaking under the weight of the evidence he laid before me. Photos, texts, and, most damning of all, the necklace from Alex. Each piece a testament to my betrayal, a narrative of deceit that I could no longer deny. My attempts at explanation were feeble, desperate. "David, please, let me explain." It wasn't, but my words dissolved into the chilly air, David's expression unyielding, a mask of stone-cold finality. The man I loved, the man I had hurt beyond repair, stood before me, a stranger clad in the armor of his pain. In that moment, the magnitude of my actions crashed over me. The lies, the secret meetings, the stolen moments with Alex, all of it culminated in this singular, devastating point of no return. David, once my anchor, had become the judge of my folly, his verdict clear in the silent withdrawal of his heart. The confrontation I had dreaded, yet subconsciously anticipated, unfolded with a brutal clarity. David's evidence was irrefutable, his pain palpable, and my guilt a chasm too vast to bridge. My pleas for forgiveness, for understanding, fell on deaf ears, the chasm between us widening with each word I uttered. Caught in the web of my own making, I faced the ruins of the life I had once cherished. The man I had vowed to love and cherish stood before me, a living embodiment of the trust I had shattered. In his eyes, I saw the reflection of the woman I had become, a stranger to myself, lost in the labyrinth of choices that led us here. The confrontation, though silent and cold, was a cacophony of unspoken recriminations, a dance of shadows and regrets. As the reality of my betrayal settled in, the finality of David's judgment echoed in the void left by his departing back. The love we had shared, now a casualty of my indiscretions, lay in tatters at our feet, a poignant reminder of the cost of my actions. There's a certain kind of silence that follows the shattering of a world, the kind that echoed around me as David, with a voice empty of warmth, declared us done. I can't trust you again, he said, and each word was a nail in the coffin of our relationship. No anger, no yelling, just the cold, hard truth cutting through the night air. I was desperate, grasping at straws, trying to stitch together what was left with pleas and promises. David, please, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. We can fix this, can't we? But my words were just whispers in the wind, futile against the storm of betrayal. He left me there, right where he found me in Alex's arms, turning his back on us, on me, on everything we had built together. It was a symbolic end, cruelly fitting, and as his car drove off into the night, the finality of it all hit me like a freight train. I was alone, truly alone, for the first time in years. Walking back home was a blur, my thoughts a jumbled mess of regret and disbelief. How had I let things get so far? How could I have been so selfish? The questions circled in my mind, but no answers came. Only the heavy weight of my choices, pressing down on me. Arriving home to find my belongings piled outside was a punch to the gut. David had wasted no time erasing me from his life, every trace of our shared existence tossed out without a second thought. It was a clear message. I was no longer welcome in the life we had shared. In the days that followed, I reached out to friends, looking for some semblance of support, but the coldness of their responses was a bitter pill to swallow. My actions had cast a long shadow, and it seemed I had lost more than just David. I had lost the trust and respect of those I cared about. In a moment of desperation, I tried to reconnect with Alex, hoping for some comfort in the familiarity of his arms. But even he was out of reach, having moved on, unwilling to entangle himself further in the mess we had created. His rejection was a sobering reminder of the consequences of my actions. The isolation was palpable, a constant companion in the empty apartment I now called home. The silence was a stark contrast to the life I had known, filled with laughter, love, and the warmth of companionship. Now, there was only emptiness, a void where my heart used to be. As the reality of my situation settled in, the magnitude of my mistake became painfully clear. I had destroyed everything for a fleeting moment of happiness, and now I was paying the price. The cost of my actions was not just the loss of my relationship with David but the loss of myself. I had become a stranger, someone capable of inflicting such pain without a second thought. The days turned into weeks, and the initial shock gave way to a deep, gnawing ache. An ache for what had been and what could never be again. I was adrift, caught in the turbulent waters of regret, with no shore in sight. In my darkest moments, I realized the truth of it all. My downfall was not just the end of a relationship, it was the shattering of the person I once was. The pieces of my former self lay scattered, a puzzle too complex to put back together. And so, I was left to navigate this new reality, a world where I was the architect of my own ruin. The journey ahead was uncertain, a path marred by the shadows of my past. But one thing was clear. The road to redemption, if it existed, was mine to walk alone. Walking into the office felt like stepping into a court of judgment. The whispers started the moment I crossed the threshold, my colleagues' eyes darting away as I approached. It was as if my personal life had become the hottest topic of office gossip, each whisper a sharp reminder of the scandal I'd unwittingly become the center of. My professional life, once a source of pride, had morphed into another battleground where I faced the repercussions of my choices. The realization of my complete and utter isolation hit me hard. The friends I once confided in, the family members who'd cheered on my engagement, were now distant, their interactions tinged with disappointment and judgment. It was as if my decision had erected an invisible barrier between me and the world, leaving me to navigate the aftermath alone. One day, I caught a glimpse of David from across the street. He was laughing at something his partner said, a reminder of the life and love I'd squandered. Seeing him so unaffected, moving on with his life while I was stuck in this limbo, was a painful reminder of all that I'd lost. The thought of leaving town, starting over somewhere new where no one knew my name or my shame, was enticing. Yet, as much as I yearned to escape, I knew that running wouldn't erase the guilt or the memories. My actions had rooted me to this place, a constant shadow that loomed over any possibility of a fresh start. I sought solace in solitude, trying to rebuild myself from the ground up. But the loneliness was overwhelming, each attempt at forming new relationships hampered by the knowledge of my past indiscretions. It was as if my betrayal had branded me, a mark that I couldn't escape no matter how hard I tried. Meanwhile, David's career soared. I heard through the grapevine about his promotions, his commendations. It was a bittersweet realization to see him thrive while my world crumbled. His unblemished reputation as a dedicated officer stood in stark contrast to the ruins of my own making. It was a reminder that while life moved forward for him, I was trapped in the aftermath of my choices. The weight of my actions, the sheer magnitude of the fallout, became a burden I carried alone. The path to redemption, once a distant hope, now seemed like an impossible climb. The consequences of my betrayal were mine and mine alone to bear. Each day was a reminder of the cost of my choices, a price that seemed too steep to pay. As I navigated this new reality, the isolation became a constant companion. The journey towards forgiveness, towards any semblance of redemption, felt like a mirage, always just out of reach. The realization that I was the architect of my own downfall was a bitter pill to swallow, a truth that I faced each day with a heavy heart. In this landscape of broken dreams and lost connections, I found a sliver of strength in the acceptance of my fate. The road to rebuilding my life, to finding a way out of the shadow of my actions, was fraught with challenges. Yet, it was a path I knew I had to walk, a journey of self-discovery that was only just beginning. Amid the ruins of my former life, I started to understand that redemption wasn't about erasing the past but learning to live with its consequences, forging a new way forward, one small step at a time. The buzz of my phone cut through the silence like a siren, heralding a message that I knew would seal the fate of what once was. It was from David, not a plea, not an accusation, but a simple, final goodbye. I wish you well. Take care of yourself. That was it. No anger, no lingering hope, just a clean break, a closure that left no room for doubt. There was no path back to us, to what we had. Nights became my solace and my torment. I'd walk the streets we once explored together, each step a painful echo of memories. Our favorite coffee shop, the park bench where he'd wrap his arm around me, the laughter that seemed to hang in the air, now just ghosts that haunted me. The city that once felt like an extension of our love story now felt like a maze of missed turns and dead ends. In a desperate attempt to fill the void, I threw myself into community activities, hoping to find a sense of belonging, a distraction from the ache. But whispers followed me like a shadow, my past mistakes casting me as the pariah in any group I dared to join. The loneliness clung to me, a reminder that sometimes, the cost of our actions is paid in the currency of social exile. Then, on a whim, I adopted a pet, a small, scrappy dog with eyes full of unconditional love. In his companionship, I found a sliver of solace, a presence that didn't judge, didn't whisper. He became my shadow, my silent confidant in a world that seemed to have turned its back on me. One evening, as I walked him through the park, I saw a couple locked in an embrace, so full of love and trust. It was a stark, painful reminder of what I had lost, of the trust I had so carelessly squandered. The sight of them was a punch to the gut, a visceral reminder of the cost of my choices. In the depths of my solitude, I turned to writing, pouring my pain and regret onto the pages. It was a somber endeavor, but in the act of writing, I found a release, a way to navigate through the storm of emotions that threatened to drown me. Each word was a step towards understanding, towards accepting the harsh lessons of my actions. Occasionally, I'd see Alex in town, each encounter a sharp sting, a reminder of the folly that had led me to this point. We never spoke, our eyes barely meeting, but the weight of what had transpired hung heavily between us, an unspoken acknowledgement of the wreckage left in the wake of our affair. Now, living a life irrevocably altered by my decisions, I understand the harsh lesson of my betrayal. The consequences of my actions have marked me, shaping a new existence from the ashes of the old. My story has become a cautionary tale, not just of loss and regret, but of the profound impact our choices have on the trajectory of our lives. This journey, marked by solitude and reflection, has taught me the true cost of betrayal. It's a lesson in the value of trust, the fragility of love, and the strength required to face the aftermath of our actions. In the end, I've come to realize that the hardest paths often lead to the deepest insights, and perhaps, in this new chapter of solitude and penance, I'll find a way to forge a sense of peace with the past, embracing the solitude not as punishment, but as a path to